It's good. Hey everybody, welcome to Rumble Book Club. I'm your host, Michael Hernandez, and this is the show where a normal guy like me can talk about interesting books I've read, old and new, good and bad. So if you like these videos, you like what I'm talking about, you like the books I'm reading, go ahead and follow me on Rumble, follow me on Parler, and more importantly, comment, share. Let me know if there's any books you want me to read or any of the charities that I do focus on. Let me know if there's one that's particularly close to you, and I'll look into it. Before we begin, I do want to take a look at our charity focus, and today that is the Little Sisters of the Poor. God blesses each and every person with human dignity. That's a fact. And the elderly and sick are in many cases left out of view of a society that drifts further and further from respecting human life. Now, the Little Sisters of the Poor has made it their mission to provide love, care, and community for the sick elderly of every race, religion, and nation. They're located in over 30 countries, and the Little Sisters have spread the love of Christ to homes all over the world. If you want to donate to this organization and help them reach out to all the sick elderly of the world, help them to give them a place, give them ears that'll listen, hands that'll help, and smiles to see each and every day, someone that loves them and cares for them as if they were their own family, because we are all part of the family of God. You can go visit their website to find your local chapter at littlesistersofthepoor.org. That's littlesistersofthepoor.org. All right, so today we have a big show today because we're going to be covering a serious piece of literary genius. Today we're going to take a look at actually one of my father's favorite books, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. So this is a book that's read through hundreds, if not thousands, of schools all throughout the United States, including middle school, high school, and I would imagine it's even studied to some extent in college. So it's read. It's a book that pretty much everyone growing up is familiar with, but not a whole lot of people actually look through. They just kind of suffer through it through school, when in fact it shouldn't be a piece of work that you suffer through. It should be something that you actually enjoy. Now, it studies the racial divide in the early 20th century in America. It studies the innocence of childhood and the loss of it, the movement from childhood to adulthood, and the strength of character in the face of public pressure. Those are just some of the themes that it hits on, some of the concepts that it hits on. We're going to get into our three-part critique of the book, looking into the aesthetics. I have the 1982 printing, so it's a little bit older. There's a lot more new versions out there. It's reprinted, you know, almost every year. It seems like they have a new edition of it. But I have the 82 version, simple cover. It's got kind of a general illustration that adds some artistic value. It's not too crazy. It has some general themes from the book put artistically well. I think it's done pretty well, although I'm not a fan of kind of the wording up there. I wish they kept it a little more plain, but that's a small complaint for someone that is as boring as me. So I will still rate it strong at a 8 out of 10. Now, looking into the readability. The language itself is a little dated considering it was written in 1960, but it's still straightforward. It's easy to understand. If this is your first time as a high school student reading any kind of classic literature, you might struggle with it a little bit, which is why I would recommend a book this good for how old it is. I would try to read other pieces from a similar time period first to get used to reading that style, because it's not exactly written in the way that people converse naturally today, but it is something that I find still very easy to understand. The concepts, the story itself, the plot line, it is easy to follow. Again, I have the 82 version, so visually the pages are going to be a little more faded, but even when I bought it, it was cream color pages. The font isn't too small. It's relatively bold, so it's pretty easy on the eyes, but also, you know, keep in mind, it's a book that's written in 1960. As long as you have at least a tiny bit of experience reading slightly older classic literature, you'll do absolutely fine reading it. You're not going to be lost in the book. Don't be scared. Don't be intimidated by this book if you're a college student watching this. You can read it. You can understand it. Take it one sentence at a time. You'll do just fine. The readability of it, I'm still holding strong as a 10 out of 10. Now, the content is where we're going to spend a little bit more time than we typically do with books, because it is such a commonly read book. We're going to go a little deeper into it than I typically do, where I just provide a rough outline. So there are some misconceptions with this book. The problem with it is people tend to read their current political beliefs and they read it into the book, which is never a good idea if you're trying to read any kind of literature. You have to understand the date that it was written, the concerns of when it was written, and I think in order to really appreciate a text, you have to be able to read it as a listener to a story, not an activist waiting for an agenda to be spoken to you. You can't look at it trying to find what you want to see in the book. You've got to read it to appreciate the actual story of it, and then allow the themes to come to you naturally. So it follows a close-knit Alabama family featuring Jean Louise Finch. Her nickname is Scout. She's kind of a tomboy. There's Jeremy Finch, goes by Jim. And there's Atticus Finch, the father, the head of the household. So Atticus he's a widower, he's a lawyer. And their storyline covers about the 2-3 year period of the Great Depression, a very racially divided South. You experience the roots and the idiosyncrasies that tomboy Scout Finch notices as a child. It's kind of like when you're growing up, you see things in a little bit more colorful and nostalgic of a manner. And the way this book reads, there are little bits of nostalgia, there are bits of understanding the community. It really does paint a picture of community, painting a picture of home. Harper Lee does a really good job describing how what we grow up with becomes a part of our world and how our actions generally move around that. So, as I said before, Atticus is a lawyer, he's a widower, he's doing his best to run his family. You kind of get this in little tidbits of discussion between Atticus and his I believe his sister, Scout's aunt, where he seems kind of frustrated, he's just kind of exasperated, saying, I'm doing the best with what I can. You can tell you're seeing the human side of Atticus. He's seen as a very wise and moral character, but you do see little glimpses of humanity, particularly through the kind of sideways glancing of Scout and Jim. Now, when Atticus Finch takes a case as a lawyer of a black man accused of being raped by a white woman, and the white family is bringing this case, he's met with a lot of vitriol from the town. He's called a lot of terrible names, but he decides to hold strong to his principles and defends them. And not just defends him, but he does such a good job in court that even though the man is convicted, in court, he's still able to make a public fool of the claimant in the case by revealing all the holes in this story, all the holes in this case, to the point to where that even causes later problems for Atticus Finch and his family down the road in the book, although I don't want to bring up too much. And at the same time, the children are fascinated by their own childish ideas of a man they don't know anything about. Arthur Boo Radley, he's nicknamed Boo Radley. His real name is Arthur Radley. He's kind of this town recluse that hides away. No one ever sees him, and so they generate this strange mystery about him. The kids become fascinated by him, and they create this kind of charming, kind of strange, distant relationship where they're always trying to coax him out of the house, and Boo wants to reach out to them. He wants them to know him, but he's too scared to bring himself forward, so all he does is leave gifts for them. He leaves these gifts wanting nothing in return but their company, really. And it is kind of a charming kind of dynamic there. So there are two standout moments in the book that really made an impression on me. The first is when Jim receives a gift. I believe it's either a slingshot or a rifle, and he's eager to run outside and start shooting things, and his father pulls him aside and says, you can shoot any blue jay, warbler, whatever bird you want to go shoot, that's fine, but don't you ever kill a mockingbird. It is a sin to kill a mockingbird. And Jim kind of looks at him and asks why. And his point is, they don't do anything but sing for us. All they do, they don't eat up the crops. They don't cause any trouble. They're not, aggressive. All they do is make beautiful music for us, and they don't cause harm for anyone. And that made an impression on me because it seems like he's really laying a foundation for an appreciation of beauty in this world, and harmless giving. How we need to have an understanding that there must be an appreciation for beauty and innocence in this world. The second moment of the book is when Jim and Scout are accosted by an old lady that lives on the street, Mrs. DuBose. She's got all these flowers she loves, and she sits on her front porch just kind of judging people. And as they're walking by, she's mad at Atticus for defending a black man in court, which she finds distasteful as a white lady. And so she's throwing racial epithets at the kids, trying to get at her dad. And Jim takes offense to it, and Harper Lee makes a point that he doesn't have a short fuse. And for some reason, this gets under his skin, and he takes a baton that belongs to Scout, and he destroys all of her plants. Just blasts them with the baton. And when Atticus finds out, he doesn't say, "Attaboy, she had it coming," you know, "Hey, give her a sorry, but hey, good job." No, he doesn't do that. He says, "You did something wrong. She should have come at me to tell me how she feels, but nonetheless, what you did was wrong. We're going to focus on your actions, son. You're going to go there, you're going to apologize," and he makes Jim make it right. He ends up going to her house every day after school and having to read to her. And through this process of him spending time with someone who he doesn't like and who doesn't like him, they begin to see the humanity in each other. And I think that's telling a bigger story than just this little microcosm of an event. I think it's really talking about how if we actually spend time with the people we don't like, we'll come to understand the humanity in them better. And it also is a story how we can't lash out in anger even if we think our anger is justified. There has to be a better way about addressing our anger. So I thought that was an important point. It's kind of a long way going around the content, but the content is really, really strong. I would grade it a 10 out of 10. Fantastic book. I found this at Barnes & Noble. There isn't a store in America you're not going to find this book. I promise you. You're going to find it at Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Walden Books, if that's still even a thing, Half Price Books. You're going to find it at a bookstore. Don't even look online. You're going to find this at the bookstore no matter where you go. So, the book is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Thanks for sticking around for such a long video. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and go read something.